Among other things, the Chicago School is also known for the social responsibility theory of the press. The Chicago School was the first independent department of sociology founded in an American university. It was founded in 1892 by Albion Small. It is the birthplace of pragmatism and symbolic interactionism. Robert Ezra Park, W.I. Thomas, Charles Burgess, Herbert Blumer, Philip Hauser are key figures associated with the school. Robert Ezra Park is central to the Chicago School. His view of the city as his laboratory and his interest in the role of media were hugely influential among his colleagues and the researchers. To Park, the sociologist was a super reporter who could improve conditions by understanding and communicating the actual lived realities of social life. The Chicago School saw modern cities as great communities made up of hundreds of small social groups. These groups were referred to as pluralistic groups in recognition of their cultural and racial diversity. The Chicago School scholars practiced the sociology of the underdog, the misfits, and the marginalized. The centrality of newspapers was the central theme of the Chicago scholars, and it was representative of the sense of communication as the cement of social life. Park, a former journalist, collaborated with journalists Franklin Ford and John Dewey for an experimental newspaper, The Thought News, at the Chicago School. It was a monthly subscription-based newspaper reporting the findings of sociological research for the betterment of society. A newspaper reporting sociological research. Chicago scholars Herbert Blumer, Philip Hauser, and L.L. Thurstone took part in the famous Pain Fund series. This sought to assess the effects of motion pictures on young people. It was a huge survey of thousands of children and youth from 1929 to 1932. It resulted in 10 books and is regarded as a landmark study. The Chicago School believed that unregulated mass media served the interests and tastes of dominant groups. The Chicago School wanted a positive role for government regulation of the press. They wanted government regulation to provide enabling structures for a healthy public sphere. A private commission of inquiry was set up in 1942 in the United States under the chairmanship of Robert Hutchins, who was the Chancellor of the University of Chicago, to look into the criticisms against the US press. Ideas put in the Hutchins Commission report, brought out in 1947, is known as the social responsibility theory of the press. The Committee on Communication was formed in 1947 in the Chicago School to study problems of mass communication in modern society. The journal Studies in Public Communication was brought out by this committee. In this journal, Elihu Katz for the first time introduced the uses and gratifications paradigm. One of the most influential publications of the Chicago School was The Polish Peasant in Europe and America, published in 1920 by W.I. Thomas and Florian Znanicki. It used personal documents as a type of research methodology. Personal letters, autobiographical life histories, and other such documents were used for inductive research. Polish newspapers and files and archives from the Bureau for the Protection of Immigrants was the first systematic use of these sources from which to derive data. Work agency and court records were also used. First-hand data were given more emphasis than historical and archival research by the Chicago School. Initially, field research involving a combination of interviews, observations, personal documents, census tract data, and newspaper accounts were emphasized, and they regarded social surveys of that time as unscientific. In the late 1920s, in the Chicago School, the seeds of modern quantitative sociology were sown. Structured interviews and questionnaires, scaling techniques, and statistical analysis of numeric variables were done. Chicago's golden era in research was as much quantitative as qualitative. George Herbert Mead, in his book Mind, Self and Society, stressed that human beings are distinct from other creatures as they have the capacity for language and thus can think, reason, communicate, and coordinate their actions with others. Human consciousness emerges out of the process of symbolic interaction. So Mead claimed that we paint our self-portrait taking the role of the other, imagining how we look to another person in the community. And the self is defined largely through interaction with this environment. And this idea of the self leads to certain kinds of behavior. It was a student, Herbert Blumer, who coined the term symbolic interactionism. Blumer used three premises. Firstly, people act toward things on the basis of the meanings they have for them. And meanings of such things are derived from people's interactions with others. And meanings are managed and transformed through interpretation and self-reflection. Symbolic interactionism thus rejects simple stimulus-response ideas of behavior. It provides greater role to individuals and his community. Individuals construct meaning through the communication process because meaning is not intrinsic to anything. Interactionists believe that researchers must become familiar with the worlds of meaning of individuals or groups they choose to study. They must take the role of the social actors they are investigating, immersing in their everyday worlds and discourse and observing their interactions. The Chicago School's multi-method approach, combining ethnographic and life history methods with large-scale quantitative ecological mapping projects, is still used. Mass media were a part of a complex set of social institutions that shaped human interactions.